So things are still going pretty badly for CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077. As you may have seen, there is that recent story that Cyberpunk 2077's big patch 1.2 has been delayed. There's been a lot of back and forth among the community and fans or detractors as to what happened here. And although we're going to go over what CDPR says themselves, there's actually quite a bit outside of what CDPR said themselves to give greater context that will either confirm or deny some of those conspiracy theories running around about this. And even further, I want to take a look at the impact this has on the status of the game right now and why it's continuing some of those problems. This definitely isn't a good thing on multiple fronts. With that said though, let's first look at the most recent news, the most recent tweet from the official Cyberpunk 2077 Twitter. While we dearly wanted to deliver patch 1.2 for Cyberpunk 2077 in the time span we detailed previously, the recent cyber attack on the studio's IT infrastructure and extensive scope of the update mean this unfortunately will not happen. We'll need some additional time. Our goal for patch 1.2 goes beyond any of our previous updates. We've been working on numerous overall quality improvements and fixes, and we still have work to do to make sure that's what you get. With that in mind, we're now aiming for release in the second half of March. It's not the news we enjoy sharing, but we want to make sure we launch this update properly. Stay tuned for more information as the time draws closer. Thank you for your continued patience and support. So for me, I'm actually pretty surprised they missed this deadline, and there even was a bit of a leak kind of. On Steam, CDPR has the CDPR internal QA depot. So basically it's this file unlisted uploaded to Steam that they're using likely to test this patch. It's been getting updates over the past couple of days after not getting updates for a little while. So a lot of people are speculating earlier this week that they would in fact make their February launch date for the large patch 1.2. And actually just earlier today, it got another update, only being 6 hours ago. But of course, they're not going to hit that target. And this has spurred a lot of backlash around the community and fans. A lot of people are pretty unhappy about this as the game does remain in a fairly rough state, especially on last gen consoles. I mean, even just right now for this video, I played about 30 minutes on my Xbox One X, which isn't even a base model, and you can see the FPS gets pretty rough at some points. This just running around the city, not even in the densest part, it's still in that prologue session. But as you can imagine, with this news, there's been a lot of speculation or rumors as to what's truly the cause. Should we take CDPR at face value? They cite how the recent cyber attack, as well as just the scope of this update, are somewhat to blame for the delay. And a lot of people, especially on the hack, have been really going back and forth. If you're not familiar, recently CDPR was hacked. Cyberpunk's source code, as well as a ton of internal documentation from accounting to legal documents were taken. And even immediately after the news of that hack went live, there was a lot of discussion that CDPR would later use this as a scapegoat. And actually, I kind of thought that. I figured that there's no way this hack alone, which perhaps set them back a few days, would have led to the extensive 3-week to now a month delay we're seeing for this update. But in reality, it seems like that may not actually be the case, and this hack may be affecting them a lot more than many people realize. As it was recently reported by Jason Schreier how CDPR, when talking to former employees of the company, those concerned that, hey, they still have my details, hackers just get access to my details, what are you doing to fix this? CDPR said they cut off remote access to internal network resources and isolated the internal network from the internet. Basically meaning that although some employees are able to work at the actual offices and in the offices, any of the employees that were working remotely seemingly can't do any work. Like the core code base, all of the core files of the game, the things being updated are only accessed if you're actually at the headquarters. And of course, with the worldwide pandemic that is going on, a good chunk of the employee base is reportedly not actually at the headquarters and effectively have had an unplanned vacation. Now, of course, the cause of this unplanned vacation led to many of their personal details potentially being leaked, but at the same time, it seems like they haven't actually been able to do much work at CDPR in this time frame. And also many employees reportedly had to send in their computers to be scanned for malware or any other byproducts of this hack overall. It's been 2.5 weeks since the news of this hack went live and nearly 3 weeks since it seems like the hack may have actually occurred. 2.5 weeks is a pretty long time to not be able to do any work, and as a result, this month-long delay actually makes a lot of sense. Now, of course, again, it's not totally clear what portion of the workforce can't actually work on Cyberpunk 2077. We don't have concrete numbers on that. It does seem like it is a significant portion of the overall workforce, but this puts CD Projekt Red in a particularly rough spot. They mentioned the second half of March, but with the way things are shaping up now, you definitely have to think it'll really be towards the end of March. which would put that release date at over a month away from right now, meaning that it'll likely be at least 3.5 months in between the release of Cyberpunk 2077 and by the time this patch actually comes out. But again, as I'm showing you in some of this console footage, this is a needed patch on base last gen consoles, so yes, some people are playing it and able to play it. For a lot of people, this is not a playable state. The FPS is dropping too low, or even just the general bugs or glitches you might encounter in the game overall. Not to mention, just the game has a lot of other problems. Take for example, as I've been mentioning, the perks. At least 10 perks just don't work at all, and then many other perks are utterly useless, where they technically function, but they basically are pointless. And this news overall has definitely had an impact for investors, as we see the stock price take another big hit. And over the past couple of weeks, in the absence of any major news from CD Projekt outside of the hack most recently happening, we've seen the stock price just kind of gradually work its way downward with a few bigger drops in between. As far as the player count goes, it's actually been holding fairly well on Xbox. When I last reported on it over a week ago, it was at the 33rd spot. Now it is at the 34th spot, so it's holding pretty well. But in Steam, Cyberpunk 2077 has lost 65% of its player base over the past month, and for the first time this week has actually dropped under 20,000 players as far as the 24-hour peak goes. It is a number that is right now lower than Skyrim on Steam, although of course that's not accounting for the GOG numbers. And let's not forget, the game is still not even available to buy on the PlayStation Store. And with all this said, it still does leave the question, how good is this patch actually going to be? CDPR has been hyping this up as one of the larger patches, but we haven't actually seen a larger patch yet. Every patch thus far has been relatively small compared to the number of glitches and bugs in the game overall, and none of them have even begun to touch any of the broken features or just what could be argued to be missing features, like a proper police system is a commonly referred to one. 3.5 months after release, I was definitely for one expecting to start see at least news around some of those DLC features. Right around the end of March is also when CDPR is likely going to be doing their end of year earnings call. It'll be definitely interesting to see what kind of impact this patch has. In the past, they said, although they're going to try and improve performance on base last gen consoles to have realistic expectations, will they actually get the game to be able to have a close to stable 30 FPS, or are dips and drops inevitable? This also does seem to confirm that the whole pipeline is likely getting delayed. DLCs pushed back later in the year, that being those free DLCs that we don't know much about yet. And when it comes to expansions, it seems almost certain that those are at least a year away at this point. We technically don't have a concrete date as far as when expansions were expected to come, but you have to imagine all this has led to some internal delays with their anticipated release dates. Now on the flip side though, to leave things off on a positive note, this patch does have a lot of potential, and especially when this goes live, we should hopefully be seeing patch 1.2, which could be massive. Perhaps not only does it improve performance on consoles, also fixes a ton of bugs, and maybe even adds in a couple of quality of life features, or fixes some of those broken features. That would definitely be a big win if this ends up being super meaty and affecting multiple facets of the game. That would kick off a ton of positive PR, then shortly thereafter we will have the earnings call with CDPR, where in the past they have said they would be laying out some kind of timeline for the future of this game, both when it comes to DLCs, expansions, and even perhaps multiplayer. So if all goes well, we could see a ton of good news all in the span of a week or so, although it does definitely seem like between now and then things will be relatively quiet, and it seems like that's okay. Let CDPR handle their things. They've had many problems with Cyberpunk between the release itself and then some of the ensuing issues and the most recent hack causing quite a bit of problems, but hopefully a month from now we'll be talking very highly about what's coming next for this game and what this patch has delivered. With that said, I thank you all again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. With that, I hope to see you all next time. Later.